The knocking started at 30:04 a.m. and the first thing it said was my name. Not tapped, not pounded. Said. 3 deliberate impacts against the aluminum skin of my sleeper berth door, spaced like syllables. The exact rhythm of my name spoken aloud by someone who knew how to say it, how I expected to hear it, how my mother said it, how my dispatch said it when a load was urgent. 3 knocks with a pause that functioned exactly like the space between a first and last name. I'd been parked at the Clearwater fuel stop on I-84 in Idaho since 11 p.m. February 19th, 2025. I was hauling frozen seafood from Portland to Salt Lake City, 12-hour drive, broken into 2 shifts. I'd taken my mandatory break, eaten a gas station sandwich that tasted like the plastic it came in, and climbed into my sleeper berth by 11:30. The fuel stop's lot was 3/4 full, reefer units humming their collective mechanical choir, the particular white noise of a truck stop at night that experienced drivers learn to sleep through like its silence. I'd been deeply asleep. The knock yanked me from that depth immediately. No gradual surfacing. One moment unconscious, the next sitting upright in complete darkness with my heart doing something irregular in my chest. The knocking had been 3 beats, but I'd processed it as my name. I told myself I'd dreamed it. The way your brain sometimes converts external sounds of the narrative during the last seconds of sleep. An engine backfire becomes a gunshot. A dropped key becomes a closing door. 3 random knocks become your name. Neurological coincidence, nothing real. Then it happened again. This time I was fully awake, sitting upright, alert. 3 knocks, same spacing, same rhythm, same quality of intentionality. From the rear door of my sleeper berth, the door that opened onto the gap between my cab and trailer. A gap approximately 18 inches wide, 3 feet off the ground, accessible only by someone who deliberately gone around my rig and positioned themselves in that narrow space. I checked my phone. 3:04 a.m., no signal. Not unusual for rural Idaho. Unusual that the loss was complete. 0 bars. Not the 1 bar uncertainty you get in poor coverage areas. 0. Like signal had been actively removed from the vicinity. I stayed still, listening. The reefer units hummed. Someone's jake brake fired on the distant highway. Normal sounds, nothing that explained the knocking. I reached for my flashlight, 4-cell mag light, the kind with enough heft to be a secondary purpose beyond illumination if necessary. I kept it in the fabric pocket sewn into the berth wall. My hand found it without looking. 3rd set of knocks. Harder this time, more insistent. The aluminum panel vibrating slightly with the impact, and this time something else. Between the 2nd and 3rd knock, a vocalization. Not a word, not a scream, something in between. A sound that bypassed language and went directly to the part of my brain that had been registering threats since before humans had brains complicated enough for language. I pressed myself to the forward wall of the berth, away from the rear door. The door I'd checked 3 times before sleeping. Locked. The lock was a simple mechanism, but solid. A sliding bolt. I'd thrown it myself. I heard it slide back. The sound of the bolt disengaging was distinct, mechanical, clear. I'd heard that sound hundreds of times. Knew it exactly. It was that sound. The door didn't open. The bolt had been thrown back, but the door remained closed. Like whatever was outside had disengaged the lock and then paused, teaching me that the lock wasn't protection, demonstrating access before using it. I turned on the flashlight, aimed it at the door. Standard sleeper berth door, gray painted metal. The bolt was visibly, clearly, unambiguously in the unlocked position. I hadn't unlocked it. I moved forward, into the cab, into the driver's seat, which was forward of the berth door. If something came through that door, I'd be ahead of it. I locked the cab partition door between the berth and the cab. Another bolt. Another lock I'd checked at 11 p.m. I sat in the driver's seat with my flashlight and my phone and my rapidly deteriorating confidence in locks. Looking at my mirrors, the passenger side mirror showed the space between my cab and the truck parked in the adjacent space. Empty. The driver's side showed the fuel stops building. Lights on. Normal. Distant. My CB radio was on. had been on all night turned low. Channel 19. Background static and the occasional late-night transmission. I reach for the mic. Breaker 19, this is Cascade Runner. Anyone in a Clearwater lot reading? Got a situation. Static. Then a voice. Female. Clear. Too clear for the middle of the night CB quality I expected. Cascade Runner, this is Highline 6. Reading you. What's your situation? Someone's knocking on my berth door. 3 a.m. They've unlocked my bolt somehow. I'm up in the cab now. What lot number? Clearwater Fuels stop on 84. I'm in the B section. Space B14. Static. Longer than a normal response pause. Then, Cascade Runner. I'm in the A section. I can walk over if you want eyes on the outside. I'd appreciate it. Give me 3 minutes. I watch my mirrors. 3 minutes. Parking lot was still. No movement between trucks. The cold was visible in my mirrors. The slight fogging of exhaust from idling engines. The way distant lights had that winter sharpness. Nothing moved that shouldn't be moving. At the 2-minute mark, knocking started again. Not on the berth door this time, on the driver's window, right beside my head. I forced myself not to react physically. Held still. Breathed. Turned my head slowly to look at the driver's window. Nothing there, but the knocking continued. 4 beats this time. Harder, the window vibrating. I could see my own reflection in the glass. Just my reflection. Nothing outside it. Nothing behind it. The knocking coming from a surface with nothing on the other side. Then my reflection smiled. I hadn't smiled. My face was rigid with the specific expression of someone trying very hard to appear calmer than they are. But my reflection was smiling. Wide. Wrong. The smile of someone who found something funny that nobody else should find funny. I turned away from the window. Found my eyes had nowhere safe to go. Forward windshield, darkness and the fuel stop's distant lights. Passenger window. The gap between trucks. Clean. Empty. My CB crackled. Cascade Runner. I'm outside the B section. Space B14. I'm looking at your rig. Everything looks normal from out here. Check the rear berth door. Between the cab and the trailer. 30 seconds. Rear berth door looks closed. Can't see the lock from here. Nothing in the gap though. Space between your rig and the next one is clear. Can you hear anything? Static from your rig. Reefer. Normal sounds. The knocking on my window had stopped when she started speaking on the CB. Stopped mid-sequence, like it had been interrupted. Like the presence outside had become cautious upon realizing I'd made contact with someone else. Stay on your radio, I said. Don't go anywhere. Copy. I looked at my driver's window again. My reflection was back to normal. Unsmiling. Frightened. Looking back at me was my real expression. Something was knocking on my window from outside, I told Highline 6, but nothing's visible out there. I'm standing 6 feet from your driver's door. Nothing's there. Nothing visible anyway. Pause. I've been driving 15 years. I know what nothing visible means and what it doesn't. What doesn't it mean? It doesn't mean nothing's there. Sometimes things not that you can't see. Most drivers who've been out here long enough have a story. Yours isn't unusual. This felt different. It said my name. Another pause. Longer. It knew your name. In the knocking, the rhythm, my name. Cascade Runner. What's your real name? David Reed. Silence on the CB for a full minute. Then Highline 6's voice changed. More careful. David. That's specific. That's not the usual report. Usually it's knocking. Sometimes it's voices. Names are less common. Less common but not unheard of. Less common but not unheard of. Yes. What knows names? She didn't answer immediately. The CB static filled the silence. I washed my mirrors. Nothing. The fuel stop was still and normal and cold. "I'm going back to my rig," she said finally. "You should be okay now. Whatever it is, it doesn't usually persist after contact is established. After you've talked to someone, it needs isolation. It feeds on the alone quality of 3 a.m. at a truck stop." "What is it?" "I'll tell you what it's not. It's not a person. I've been standing outside your rig for 10 minutes, and I'd have seen a person. It's not an animal. Wrong kind of knocking. Wrong kind of knowing." She paused. "Past that, I don't have better words than, it's something that knows your name and knocks on your cap at 3 a.m. I've heard reports from maybe 20 drivers over the years. None of them got a better explanation. Did any of them open the door when the bolt was thrown back?" The pause was the longest yet. "Two did. And they finished their careers shortly after. Different reasons. One health. One just stopped. Retired early. Neither one talks about that night. But they're alive. They're alive. Yes. But alive. Yes. But alive covers a lot of territory." She signed off. I heard her rig door close in the physical distance. The CB went back to background static. I sat in my driver's seat until 5:30 a.m. Didn't sleep. The knocking didn't return. At 5:30, I climbed back to the berth to check the door. The bolt was still in the unlocked position. I threw it back manually. Felt it engage. Solid. Right. I got back behind the wheel. Drove to Salt Lake City. Made my delivery at 2 p.m. Logged the time. Signed the paperwork. Normal. 2 weeks later, same route. I stopped at Clearwater again. Different space. Not B14. I asked the night manager if he knew a driver called Highline 6. Female. Parked in a section mid-February. He checked his fuel records. No Highline 6, no female driver with that handle in our records for that night. Night of the 19th, we had 41 rigs fueled. I can tell you the handles that checked in. Highline 6 isn't on the list. She was on the CB. Clear signal. Knew the lot layout. He shrugged. "CB doesn't require check-in. Anyone could have been transmitting." She said she walked to my rig, stood outside it. "Nobody signed into the lot on foot that night." I sat with that for a moment. The voice had been real, clear, calm, knowledgeable, the kind of voice that carried the weight of 15 years of road experience, the kind of voice that knew what nothing visible meant. She'd known what was out there. She'd been out there with it, standing in the lot at 3 a.m., looking at my rig, and the knocking had stopped when she spoke. I thought about that, about whether the knocking stopped because the presence became cautious, or because the presence had finished once contact was established, once I'd spoken to the only other entity awake in that lot at 3 in the morning. I asked the night manager one more question. "Does it get used?" He checked something on his screen, typed, with the result, B14. "Huh?" He turned the screen toward me. "According to our records, B14 is listed as non-operational. Drainage issue. We're not supposed to assign vehicles there. Has been that way since." He scrolled, "since January 2023. I parked there February 19th. You shouldn't have been able to. The payment terminal at B14 is disabled. You'd have had to park there without paying." "I paid at the kiosk inside." "Which kiosk assigned you B14? I described it." "The kiosk I'd used." He looked at the layout. "That kiosk doesn't assign B section spaces. Only A and C. B section is full self-assign, no payment terminal." I had a receipt. Showed him. It said B14. He looked at it for a long time. "I can't explain this receipt," he said. "This isn't our format. Our receipts have a QR code at the bottom. This doesn't." I looked at the receipt I'd kept for 2 weeks in my visor clip. The fuel stop's name, the date, the space number, B14, February 19th, 3:04 a.m. Not the time I parked. Not 11 p.m. 3:04 a.m. The time the knocking started, the receipt wasn't from me parking. It was from something else. Something that had assigned itself B14 at 3:04 a.m. and left me documentation. Evidence of arrival. A record of occupancy. I left Clearwater and drove north. Kept my CB off. Parked in a Love's in Boise where the lot was brightly lit and the spaces had cameras, and I could see every angle of my rig from the driver's window. At 3:04 a.m., I was awake. Sitting up. Waiting. Nothing knocked. But at 3:05 a.m., my CV turned on by itself. No one at the mic. The knob was in the off position, but the unit was powered. And in the static, very faint, very clear, the rhythm of two words. David. I've been driving for 3 years since that night. I don't park at Clearwater anymore. I drive past it at full highway speed, and I don't look at the B section. And I keep my CB off between midnight and 4 a.m. Because some handles don't show up in fuel records, and some presences know your name before you've introduced yourself, and some knocks aren't knocks, they're pronunciation. Story number 2. The family at the window. The woman at my passenger window at 3 a.m. was smiling like someone who'd been waiting a long time, and the 2 children behind her were holding signs that said Hateful US. And when I called the police, they found no one, but the handprints on my window were on the inside. March 7th, 2025. I was parked at the Buckhorn Rest Area on I-70 in Kansas, hauling automotive parts from Denver to Kansas City. The Buckhorn was a standard highway rest area, concrete pavilion, vending machines, restrooms, parking for maybe 40 trucks, which was mostly full at 1 a.m. when I'd arrived. By 3 in the morning, I'd slept 2 hours and was lying in my berth in that particular light sleep that experienced drivers develop. Not fully asleep, but not fully awake, body resting while some part of the brain maintains awareness. The truckers have consciousness. The knock was soft, not aggressive, almost polite. 2 gentle raps on the passenger window, the kind of knock that might mean a fellow driver needed something routine. Fuel. Directions. A question about the road ahead. I came fully awake but moved slowly. Professionally. Reached for my flashlight. Turned in the berth. Came through to the cab calmly. The professional response. The response that doesn't catastrophize a knock until there's a reason to. I look through the passenger window from the driver's seat, using the angle to see without pressing my face directly to the glass. A woman. Mid-30s. Dark hair. Wearing a light jacket inappropriate for the Kansas March cold. She was smiling. Not a strained, desperate smile. A patient smile. The smile of someone who's been waiting for something and has finally seen it arrive. She was standing at the full height of my passenger door, which put her head at window level, and she was looking directly at me with an expression that had too much recognition in it. Like she knew me. Like she'd been expecting specifically me. Behind her, partially visible in the darkness, 2 children. 8 and 10 maybe. A girl and a boy. They were holding cardboard signs, the kind you make with markers. I couldn't read them from the driver's seat angle. I leaned, adjusted my position. Read the signs. Help, US. Both signs. Same words, same marker, same size lettering, like they'd been made together. Prepared. Something was immediately wrong. Not the signs themselves. Not the woman's smile. The wrongness was compositional. The woman smiling while the children behind her held Hateful US signs was a set of behaviors that shouldn't coexist in a genuine distress situation. A mother in trouble didn't smile like that. Children in genuine danger didn't stand patiently with prepared signs. The components were individually recognizable but assembled incorrectly, like someone had researched distress situations and assembled what they thought distress should look like without understanding what it felt like. I didn't open the window, didn't unlock the door, picked up my phone and called 911. I'm at Buckhorn Rest Area on I-70 in Kansas. I have a woman and 2 children at my passenger window requesting help. I'm in truck space C7. Can you send someone? Sir, are they in immediate danger? I don't know. She's smiling, but the kids have signs that say help us. Stay in your vehicle. We'll send a unit. Keep them in sight if possible. I watched the woman. She continued smiling. She'd watched me make the call. had watched me pick up the phone and dial, had made no attempt to leave, no urgent gesturing, no escalation, just the patient smile and those children behind her. I turned on my cab's interior lights, then my exterior marker lights. The additional illumination reached her clearly. She didn't react to the light change, didn't blink excessively, just smiled. One of the children, the boy, lowered his sign, pressed his hand flat against my passenger door, low, below the window, against the door panel itself, and held it there. Not knocking, not scratching, just pressing, a steady, flat-palmed pressure contact. The warmth was visible even at my distance from the door. The kind of warmth that fogs glass slightly in cold air, like a person's body heat making contact with a cold surface. I watched the glass. Near the boy's hand position, slight fogging, the condensation of warmth on cold metal. He was physically real enough to generate body heat, to create condensation, to transfer temperature. The patrol car arrived at 3:37 a.m. I watched it pull into the lot from my driver's mirror, watched the officer approach my passenger side, watched him sweep the area with his flashlight. He came to my driver's window. I rolled it down. "Sir, I checked the area around your truck. Nobody's here. The perimeter of your vehicle is clear." A woman and 2 children. They were at my passenger window. The woman was wearing a light jacket. Kids had signs. "I see no one, sir. You're the only person in this area of the lot. The nearest occupied trucks are about 3 spaces over. Do you want me to check with the other drivers?" "Please." He walked away. I looked at my passenger window. No one there. The area where she'd been standing was empty. The children's positions behind her were empty. 37 minutes between my call and the officer's arrival. Long enough for people to have walked away. Long enough for people to have left. The officer came back. 2 other drivers in this section are awake. Neither saw the woman or the children. One has been in his cab continuously since he arrived at midnight. He would have seen anyone walk past. He looked at me with the careful neutrality of someone balancing courtesy against skepticism. "Is there any chance you were dreaming?" I was awake. I called 911 from inside a cab conversation. "I don't dream phone calls." "Fair enough. Can I take a look inside your cab, just to check that everything's secure?" I stepped out. Let him look. He checked the berth, the cab, the exterior. He spent a long time at the passenger side. "Sir," his voice changed. "Come look at this." I went around to the passenger side. He was shining his flashlight at my passenger window. Handprints on the glass. Multiple sets. An adult's handprints. 2 sets of smaller handprints. Clear. Fresh. The fog of body heat still visible around the edges, beginning to dissipate in the cold air. On the inside of the glass. "Did you put these here?" the officer asked. "I haven't touched my passenger window. I was in the driver's seat the whole time." He examined them carefully, his flashlight at different angles. "These were made from inside the cab, the smearing direction, the pressure patterns. These hands were inside your vehicle pressing outward. My doors were locked." "I believe you. Your door locks show no signs of forced entry." He stepped back, looked at the truck, looked at me. "This is a strange situation." "Yes, it is. The woman you described, the smile, the children with the signs." He looked at his notebook, like he was deciding how much to write down. "This rest area has reports. Over the years, other drivers." "What kind of reports?" "A woman at truck windows at night, always smiling. Children with signs. The signs sometimes say different things. Help, US is the most common. Sometimes it's let USI in. Once a driver reported the sign said WE's Bain Waitin'. How many reports? That I know of personally? 4. In the past 2 years. All from this rest area. All from approximately 3 a.m. All resulting in no one found. And the handprints? You're the second driver who's reported handprints on the inside. The first refused to leave his truck for 2 days. We had to send a welfare check. He was physically fine but didn't speak coherently for the entire 2 days. What happened to him after? He drove away on day 3, filed a complaint with his company about the rest area. As far as I know, he's still driving. He closed his notebook. Sir, I'm going to recommend you move to a different parking area for the remainder of your rest period. There's a truck stop 8 miles east that is covered parking and active security cameras. I took his advice, drove 8 miles east, parked under lights, slept fitfully until 6 a.m. The handprints were still on my passenger window when I reached Kansas City. I hadn't cleaned them. Hadn't wanted to touch the areas where they were. The delivery dock worker noticed them while doing the walk-around. Something wrong with your window? Kids, rest up. He leaned in to look. His expression changed. That's weird. These are inside the cab. I know. He stepped back. How did kids get inside your cab? I don't know. Were kids in your cab? Not that I'm aware of. He looked at me for a long moment, made a note on his clipboard that I didn't think was about the delivery. You should get those cleaned before your next load. I had them cleaned at a truck wash in Kansas City. The technician called me over. The handprints weren't coming off. What did they use? He asked. This isn't regular smudging. This is more like something's been burned into the glass slightly. Pressure and heat combination. Kids mess with your cab. Something like that. He tried 3 different products. Then a razor blade. The handprints remained. Clear as when I'd found them. The adult prints and the 2 smaller sets. 3 sets of hands that had been inside my cab pressing outward against glass that had been locked from the inside. I drove that truck for 2 more months before the company retired it. The handprints were on the passenger window every single day of those 2 months. Visible in certain light, clear in certain angles. The technician at the company's main depot tried twice to remove them. Same result. The truck was retired in May. I saw it in the company's lot last fall. Waiting for auction. Passenger window still marked. I don't stop at the Buckhorn anymore. I know 3 other drivers who've had the same experience there. We've talked about it the way truckers talk about the spots they avoid. Briefly, without too much detail, without looking directly at the thing we're describing. The woman is always smiling. The children are always behind her. The signs say HELUS, but the handprints are always on the inside, which means whatever is asking for help is already in. Has been in before the asking started, and the performance outside the window isn't a request. It's a notification. Story number 3. The K-Knot that moved. The knocking started at my rear bumper at 3 a.m., and over 90 minutes, it moved methodically forward along the entire length of my rig toward the cab, and I understood by the time it reached my door that the movement was a count. April 14, 2025. I was parked at the Riverbend pull-off on US 191 in Montana. Not a commercial truck stop, a scenic pull-off that truckers used on long hauls through the emptiest parts of the state. No facilities, no other trucks that night, just a gravel apron wide enough for 2 rigs, and a darkness so complete that my marker lights were the only artificial light visible in any direction. I'd parked at 11 p.m. Riverbend was 8 miles from the nearest town. The nearest town had a population of 300-something. The pull-off itself was surrounded by national forest. The nearest residence was a ranch 6 miles south whose lights I couldn't see from where I was. Complete isolation. The kind that experienced truckers accept as part of certain routes and inexperienced truckers find deeply uncomfortable. I'd driven US 121 14 times in the past 2 years. Riverbend was a known stop. Dependable. Flat. Good sight lines on the approach road. I'd never had a problem there. I was in deep sleep when the knocking started. I came awake slowly, not with the abrupt yanking consciousness of the first story, but with the gradual surfacing of someone whose brain was processing the sound and categorizing it as external and real before fully waking. By the time I was conscious, I'd already been hearing it for maybe 30 seconds. It was at the rear bumper. I could tell by the sound quality, the resonance of the impact. My trailer's rear bumper made a specific sound when struck lower and more diffuse than the cab's panels, which were closer and smaller. This was the rear bumper, the farthest point from where I slept, the far end of my 53-foot trailer. I checked my phone. 3:02 a.m. I noted the time specifically because it was already odd. 3 a.m. The kind that carries weight for reasons that might be superstition or might be something older than superstition. I noted it, and I noted the location. 8 miles from 300 people, no signal. The knocking at the rear bumper was rhythmic, not fast. One knock every 3 or 4 seconds. Deliberate, paced. The kind of rhythm that suggested intent rather than accident. An animal collision would be irregular. Wind-blown debris would be irregular. This was a heartbeat rhythm. Patient and persistent. I stayed in my berth, listening. This was the professional response. You don't exit the cab at 3 a.m. in an isolated pull-off in response to an unidentified sound at the farthest point of your rig. You listen. You assess. You gather information before action. The knocking continued at the rear bumper for approximately 6 minutes. Then it stopped. Then it started again. From a different position. Higher up. The rear doors of the trailer. Not the bumper. The lower panels of the rear doors. Same rhythm, same pace, but different resonance. A different surface producing the sound. Move forward maybe 10 feet from the original position. I turned on my berth light. Small, functional. I sat up fully. The knocking at the rear doors continued for 5 minutes. Then stopped. Then started at the trailer's midsection. The side panels. The large, flat aluminum surfaces that form the trailer's walls. Moving forward. Still the same rhythm. Still that deliberate pace. But now, clearly progressing toward the front. Toward the cab. Toward where I was sitting. I understood then that it was moving with purpose. Not wandering. Not random. Starting at the farthest point and working systematically forward, which meant the sound had started at the back of the trailer not because it arrived there, but because it started there. By choice, because starting at the back was the beginning of something that had an end, and the end was the cab. My phone still showed no signal. I turned on my CB, channel 19. Tried to raise anyone. Static. I tried channel 16, 14, 21. Static everywhere. Which was wrong. US 191 was a trucking route. Even at 3 a.m., even in Montana, there should be someone within CB range. Nothing. Complete isolation on every channel. I started timing the knocking's progress. At the trailer's midsection, 3:17 a.m. It stayed there for 11 minutes, then moved to the forward quarter of the trailer, 3:28 a.m. Stayed for 11 minutes, then moved to the forward landing gear area, 3:39 a.m. 11 minutes, then moved to the tractor's rear the area directly behind my sleeper berth, 3:50 a.m. 11 minutes between each position. Consistent. Exact. The kind of consistency that required precision, that required intention. I was good at math. The kind of math you do in your head on long empty highways when there's nothing but road and radio. I counted positions. Rear bumper. Rear doors. Mid-trailer. Forward trailer. Landing gear. Tractor rear. 6 positions. If it continued at 11 minutes per position, it would reach my door at 4:01 a.m., 59 minutes from when it started. I sat in my berth and did the thing I'd trained myself to do when afraid. I analyzed instead of reacted. The movement pattern, the 11-minute intervals, the systematic forward progression. This was structured, this was deliberate. This was a being or a force that understood the concept of progress, of moving through space in sequence, of taking time at each point, which meant it wasn't random, which meant there was a reason for the intervals, a reason for the sequence. I thought about what you do with 11 minutes at each position. You listen. At each point along the trailer, you stop and listen to what's inside. You spend 11 minutes at each point learning the trailer's interior, mapping it, understanding what's being hauled. Frozen food. I was hauling frozen prepared meals, thousands of units of frozen food in a refrigerated trailer. Nothing that should produce this situation, nothing that should attract this kind of attention. But the thing moving along my trailer didn't know what was inside from the outside, was learning it as it moved, was spending 11 minutes at each position doing whatever a thing does when it presses itself against the surface and concentrates. At 3:50 a.m. the tractor rear knocking began. I was now on the other side of the wall. It was knocking on the thin wall between my sleeper berth and the external world behind my cab. It was 11 minutes away from my door. I moved into the driver's seat, forward of the berth. Put the key in the ignition without starting the engine. Positioned myself. 3:59 a.m. The knocking at the tractor rear stopped at exactly the 11-minute mark. I counted down the last 10 seconds. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Silence. Then the knocking at my driver's door. Same rhythm, same pace, but close now. The different resonance of my cab's door panel. The sound of foot from my ear. I sat with my hand on the key. If I started the engine and moved the rig, I'd be driving at 4 a.m. on a mountain highway in Montana with unknown road conditions and compromised mental state. If I stayed still, I was maintaining position while something knocked on my door. But I'd counted, and the thing had spent 11 minutes at each previous position, which meant I had 11 minutes before whatever happened next happened. 11 minutes was enough to think. Why the counting? Why the systematic progression? Why 11-minute intervals? An inspection. The thought arrived complete. This was an inspection. Something was inspecting my rig the way a DOT officer inspects a rig at a way station, starting at the rear. Working forward, spending regulated time at each point, following a protocol. Not a human inspection, something that had learned the structure of inspection from somewhere, from observing real inspections, had adopted the form without the content, an echo of process without the understanding behind it. If it was an inspection, the door knock was the final stage. The driver contact, the part where the inspector speaks to the driver, the part where the driver presents their paperwork and the inspector decides on a ruling. I rolled down my window. I know. Every instinct says don't open the window, don't make contact, don't acknowledge. But I'd run the analysis and reached a conclusion. This thing was following a protocol it had learned. If I didn't follow my side of the protocol, I didn't know what it would do next. But if I followed my side, the protocol said the inspection ends and the driver is released to continue. I rolled down my window. Cold Montana air, darkness, the pull-off. My marker lights reflecting off the gravel, nothing visible at my window. But the knocking had stopped when the window rolled down. I said, paperwork's in order, load is correct, hours are logged. Silence. Cold air. The distant sound of the river that gave the pull-off its name. Then a sound. Not a knock. A different mechanism, like a stamp, or like the sound of paper being marked. A single sharp sound from the area just outside my door. Then nothing. Complete silence where the knocking had been. I waited 20 minutes. The knocking didn't return. I checked every mirror from every angle. Nothing visible around the rig. I started the engine at 4:30 a.m. and drove north. At the next way station, 60 miles up the road, I was pulled in for inspection. Routine. The DOT officer did the full check. Walked the trailer length. Checked every point. Spent approximately 10 minutes per section. Reached the cab. Asked for my paperwork. When he handed back my logbook, he paused. Looked at the cover. What's this mark? I looked. On the cover of my logbook, a mark I hadn't made. A small stamped impression. The shape of it was like a seal. Like something pressed into the cardboard cover. It hadn't been there before River Bend. I don't know, I said. He studied it. Looks like an inspection stamp. Old style. We don't use this format anymore. Haven't since the 90s. He handed the logbook back. Everything checks out. You're free to go. I still have that logbook. The stamp is still on the cover. I've shown it to 3 other drivers and 2 DOT officers. The officers confirmed what the first one said. Old format. Pre-digital inspection stamp. The kind used before electronic records replaced paper seals. Whatever inspected my rig at River Bend in April used a process from the 1990s. Learned from observation or memory. Applied it to my rig in a pull-off with no signal and no witnesses. And it found everything in order. Or at least, it issued a stamp that said so. I've passed through way stations 20 times since then. Every officer who sees the stamp asks about it. None of them can identify the issuing authority. None of them can match it to a current agency. One older officer looked at it for a long time and said, "Son, this is a midnight stamp." What does that mean? Old term. From before my time, for when inspections happened without cause, without assignment, just because something was checking the road and everything on it. He gave the logbook back. My grandfather drove in the 60s. He talked about midnight stamps, said they showed up on rigs that had been on certain roads at certain hours, said the rigs that had them ran good for years. No breakdowns, no accidents, like something had certified them. He waved me through. My rig has run perfectly since River Bend. 8 months. 0 mechanical issues. 0 incidents. 0 problems. The knocking moved from the back to the front, and it took an hour. And it left a stamp from a dead agency on my logbook, and I have been certified by whatever comes out at 3 a.m. on empty Montana roads, and inspects things the way it learned to inspect things from watching us do it first. Story number 4. The woman Briachu kept counting. She knocked at exactly 3 a.m., and when I looked at my people, she was standing in the rain, counting something on her fingers. And she counted all night, and in the morning there were as many marks scratched into the outside of my door as she had fingers she'd counted. May 22nd, 2025. I was at the Pilot Travel Center on I-40 in Oklahoma, hauling steel pipe from Amarillo to Memphis, a 2-day run. I'd been on the road since 6 a.m. and pulled in at 11 p.m. The Pilot was busy. 50 trucks easy. Bright lights. Fuel canopy visible from the highway. The particular security of a commercial truck stop. I parked in the overflow lot, east of the main building. Farther from the lights but not dark, not isolated, still within the general radius of a busy commercial facility. At 3 a.m. exactly. I know it was exact because I was half awake and watched the clock go from 2:59 to 3. While the knock was still occurring, I heard 2 solid strikes on my driver's door. I had a peephole. I'd installed it myself 2 years ago after an incident at a rest stop in Mississippi that I didn't talk about, but it changed how I thought about windows and doors. A marine-grade peephole that gave a wide-angle view of my driver's side while letting me remain invisible. I looked through the peephole. Standing in the light rain that had been falling since midnight. The Pilot's distant canopy lights gave just enough illumination to see her. She was not looking at my door, not looking at my window, looking at her hands, which were held in front of her at chest height, and she was counting. I watched her count. She touched her thumb to each finger in sequence, counting silently. Her lips moved with the count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. She'd complete one hand, move to the other, complete that hand, lower both hands momentarily, and begin again. A repetitive circuit, patient, focused. Like someone counting something they couldn't afford to lose count of. She was wearing a dress, the kind that suggested summer or a warm interior, not midnight rain on an Oklahoma highway. Dark hair, wet. She stood without hunching against the rain, which was irregular. People in unexpected rain hunch. They minimize their wet surface area. She stood straight, feet planted, like the rain wasn't registering. I watched her for 4 minutes without engaging. She didn't knock again, didn't look at my door, just counted. The same sequence, the same patient circuit of fingers. I went back to my berth, lay down, told myself she was waiting for someone, a driver she knew. Waiting in a strange way, but people were strange, especially at 3 a.m. at truck stops. I'd seen stranger. But I couldn't sleep, kept the peephole in mind. At 3:17 a.m. I went back to the door and looked again. She was still there, still counting, hadn't moved from her position. The same foot placement, the same straight posture in the rain, counting with the same precise circuit. She'd been counting for 17 minutes without stopping. I counted with her through the peephole, watched her lips. 1 to 10. Again, 1 to 10. Again, 1 to 10. Again, never losing count, never hesitating, never looking up. What was she counting? At 3:30 I grabbed my phone, took a photo through the peephole, The image was poor peephole lens distortion, low light, rain on the exterior. But it showed a figure. A woman-shaped figure in the right position, standing, hands raised, unclear face. I tried to call out, not opening the door or window, just my voice raised. "Ma'am, are you okay?" She stopped counting. First break in 28 minutes. Her hands lowered slightly, her head tilted, like she was hearing something from a direction she hadn't expected. Then she turned to look directly at my door, directly at my peephole. The angle was exact, looking straight at where my eye was positioned behind the convex lens. Her expression was of someone listening very carefully. Then she resumed counting. At 3:45, I called the pilot's front desk from my CB. "This is a truck in your east overflow lot. There's a woman standing in the rain at my driver's door. Has been for 45 minutes. I'm concerned for her safety. Can you describe her?" I described her. The pause before the response was longer than necessary. "Sir, we'll send someone to check. Has this been reported before? A woman standing at trucks counting?" A longer pause. "What kind of counting?" Her fingers. "What she's counting something specific. Has been for 45 minutes straight." The longest pause. Then, "Sir, I'll send someone right away. Please stay in your cab." The lot attendant arrived in a golf cart at 3:52. His headlights swept the area around my truck. He got out, walked the perimeter of my rig, came to my driver's side. I rolled my window down 2 inches. "Sir, there's no one here." She was at my door, standing and counting. I drove directly here from the building. I'd have seen anyone walking away. She didn't walk away. She was here 30 seconds ago. He shone his flashlight around. Rain-wet asphalt. My truck. The adjacent trucks. Nobody. He looked back at me. "Is it possible you were dreaming? I've been in contact with your front desk for 12 minutes. I called you while watching her. I believe you called, sir. I'm just not seeing anyone." He paused. Something in his posture changed. A decision being made. "Can I ask, the woman you described, was she counting with both hands? Like touching her fingers one by one?" "Yes. A circuit. 1 to 10. Over and over." He looked at his flashlight. The front desk asked specifically about the counting. "That means they've had this report before." "Yes." "Has this happened in this lot before?" Another pause. "I've been working this location for 3 years. You're the 4th driver to call about a counting woman." He looked at the space where she'd been. "I'm going to check your door." He walked to my driver's door, spent 30 seconds with his flashlight. Then he came back to my window. "Sir, there are marks on your door. On the paint. 10 of them. Horizontal scratches. Like made with a fingernail. About 2 inches each. Arranged in a pattern." He held up his phone so I could see the photo he'd taken. "Tally marks. Someone scored your door with tally marks. They're fresh. The metal is bright where they were made. 10 marks. 10 scratches. The number she'd been counting to." "Previous drivers," I said. "The other 3 who reported her. Did their doors have marks?" "I don't know. I wasn't there for those reports. But I can tell you this. In our incident log, the 3 reports are there. And all 3 note that the drivers had marks on their doors afterward." He lowered his phone. "Different numbers each time. 11, 7, 13, not always 10. Not always 10. So she counts different numbers. Different nights, different counts." He looked at me directly. "One driver asked me the same question you're about to ask. 'What is she counting?' He asked that. I didn't have an answer. Still don't." He paused. But he said something that stuck with me. He said that she'd been counting from 1, touching each finger until she reached a specific number, and that the specific number she counted to was different from what she was counting when he first looked. Like she was counting down to something, like she was at a specific point in the longer count. I sat with that. If she counted to 10 and marked 10 scratches on my door, she was marking where she reached. That's what he thought, that she marks a truck each night. With how far along the count is, keeps track somehow. What's she counting toward?" He didn't answer, put his flashlight away. "Get some sleep, sir. She won't come back tonight. They never come back on the same night." He got back in his golf cart. stopped, looked back at me. The driver asked me what she was counting. He came back 6 months later, parked in the lot again. Next morning, he had 19 marks on his door. He started the cart. He didn't call us that night. He just drove away in the morning, fast. The scratches on my door are still there. I asked the company about repainting. They said it was cosmetic, low priority. So they're there. 10 horizontal marks in my driver's door paint, bright, where the finish was scored. I think about the count. I think about what a woman in the rain at truck stops might be counting toward. I think about the different numbers on different trucks on different nights. I think about whether the count is cumulative, whether she's at 247 now, or 3,000, or some number large enough that she's been counting since before the highway existed. I think about what happens when she reaches the number she's counting toward. I don't park at that pilot anymore, but I've talked to drivers who do. One of them had marks on his door. He couldn't explain. 14 scratches. He hadn't heard the knocking or hadn't woken up for it. The count is ongoing. The woman is still out there, still standing in the rain at 3 a.m. outside the East Overflow lot. Still counting. Getting closer. And I think the marks aren't for her to remember where she is in the count. I think they're for the trucks, so the trucks know that she's coming. Story number 5. The K-knock from Bayer. The knocking at 3 a.m. was coming from underneath my truck, from beneath the chassis, from something lying on the asphalt under my rig that knew my schedule and had been following me for 600 miles. June 9th, 2025. I was parked at the Sagebrush Travel Plaza on US 93 in Nevada, northbound, hauling medical equipment from Las Vegas to Boise. A one-way run with a team driver. My co-driver, Terrence, had taken the first shift, parked us at Sagebrush at 11 p.m., and climbed into the upper berth. I'd taken the lower berth. Standard team arrangement. At 30:07 a.m. I woke to knocking. My first thought was another driver. A mistake. A question. I was in the lower berth. The knocking seemed to come from below and to the left. Below the left side of the cab. Below floor level. I processed this slowly. Below floor level meant beneath the truck. Beneath the chassis. Someone was under my truck, between the frame rails and the asphalt, knocking on the underside of my cab floor. I reached up and touched Terrence's berth. Terrence, wake up! He surfaced from sleep faster than most people. Team driving makes you that way. What? Listen. The knocking continued. 3 beats. Pause. 3 beats. Pause. 3 beats. Pause. From directly below us, from under the truck. Terrence was quiet for 10 seconds. That's coming from under us. Yes. Someone's under the truck. Too late, kid. We both sat with that for a moment. Someone under our truck at 3 a.m. at a Nevada truck stop. The rational explanations were not comforting. A person hiding under a truck could be many things, very few of them good. Terrence grabbed his phone. I grabbed my mag light. We moved into the cab. I checked my mirrors. Nothing visible around the truck from the cab's perspective, but the undersides of trucks aren't visible in standard mirrors. The knocking continued. 3 beats. Pause. 3 beats. Should we get out? Terrence asked. 2 of us. Daytime protocol is one of us stays in the cab and keeps the engine running. But we need eyes on the underside. I'll go, Terrence said. He was bigger than me and had spent 8 years as a corrections officer before switching to trucking. The psychology of that was reliable. He climbed out. I watched in the mirror, saw his legs as he walked around to the left side of the truck, saw his flashlight beam sweep the underside. Nothing here, he said loudly enough for me to hear through the door I'd left open. Knocking is still happening. I'm looking directly at the underside. There's nothing here. No one under the truck. I climbed down, came around, lay on the asphalt, and looked under the truck with my mag light, the full length of the chassis visible. Driveline. Ear tanks. Frame rails. The asphalt of the parking lot. Nothing else. No person. No object that could be producing knocking. Terrence knocked on the chassis from outside, his knuckle against the frame rail. That's not the sound, I said from underneath. The sound is from inside the structure somehow, like vibration from something on the asphalt under us. I moved along the underside, checked every accessible point, reached the spot where the knocking was clearest, directly under the cab floor. Put my ear close to the asphalt. The knocking was coming from below the asphalt, from under the pavement. 3 beats, pause. 3 beats, pause. Muffled by the blacktop but distinct, regular, patient. I got up. It's under the pavement. Terrence looked at me. Under the pavement. Below the asphalt, directly beneath our parking position. We stood for a moment with that information. Pipe, Terrence said. Could be a water main or something. Pressure fluctuation. Sounds like knocking. Pressure fluctuations aren't that regular. That's a pattern, 3 and 3. Could be. But he didn't sound convinced. We went back inside. I pulled up the location on satellite view. Sagebrush Travel Plaza, US 93. The aerial image showed the lot. Our approximate parking position. Beneath that position, according to the geological survey maps I'd found in 30 seconds of searching, was nothing. No pipes, no infrastructure. The Sagebrush Travel Plaza was built on solid high desert geology. No utility lines ran under our parking position. The nearest water line was 40 feet north. The knocking continued for another 20 minutes, then stopped. We drove north at 4:30 a.m. when Terrence's rest was complete. I took the wheel, drove the Nevada and Idaho emptiness, reached the Boise delivery facility at 6 p.m., made the delivery. Found a truck stop for the night. At 3 a.m., Terrence woke me up. Listen. The knocking. From below, from beneath the asphalt at the Boise truck stop lot. 3 beats. Pause. 3 beats. 600 miles from where it had started. I grabbed my phone, pulled up the lot's location, checked the geology, checked the utility maps. The Boise truck stop was built on well-documented flat terrain. No anomalies. No pipes under our position. It followed us, Terrence said. He was sitting up, fully awake, with the expression of someone revising their working model of reality. Or it was always here and started knocking when we arrived. What's the difference? I thought about it. If it followed us, it's attached to us. Our truck. Or us. If it was always here, it's attached to the location. To the geology. To whatever is under truck stops in Nevada and Idaho that produces this pattern. 3 and 3, Terrence said. What's 3 and 3? 6. The number 6. Or the pattern of 3-3, which in Morse code is the letter S twice, which in nautical signal is SOS. Someone calling for help, I said, from under the pavement, from somewhere under the pavement. We sat with that for a while. The knocking continued its patient pattern, 3 and 3. Every 30 seconds, not varying, not escalating, just continuing. If something is down there calling for help, Terrence said slowly, and it's been following us for 600 miles, it's not something recent, not someone who fell into a utility trench last week. No, something that's been down there long enough to find trucks and follow trucks, or something that was put down there and has been knocking ever since. The knocking continued for 41 minutes, then stopped exactly as it had in Nevada. No fade, no deceleration. Just stopping. I called the Travel Plaza's overnight manager in the morning, asked about the parking area's history. He was confused by the question but answered. This area used to be farmland, before the interstate, before this whole commercial strip, before that. Maybe 1920s and 30s, there were workers' housing units here, for the railroad construction crews. What happened to them? Demolished when the highway came through, late 50s, early 60s. Built over, like everything. He paused. Why do you ask? What happened to the people who lived there? The workers? I don't know specifically. They moved on. Labor camps move on when the work moves on. All of them? He was quiet for a moment. You heard something, didn't you? Under the lot. Knocking. 3 and 3. I felt cold. You know the pattern. I've worked here 4 years. I've had maybe 8 reports. Always 3 and 3. Always from the same section of the lot. He paused. There are rumors about a work crew, 1934. They were building a railroad underpass. The ground shifted. A collapse. He stopped. How many? The rumor says 12, but it was 34. Depression era. They didn't always keep good records for labor camp workers. 12 or more. Under the lot. Under the pavement. Knocking. But Terrence and I had heard it in Nevada first, 600 miles south. Has the 3-3 pattern ever been reported anywhere other than here? I asked. Here and one other place I know of. A truck stop in Nevada. Sagebrush something. Driver called me once. Said he'd heard it there and then heard it here 2 days later. I drove back to Las Vegas the following week with a different co-driver. New load. Normal run. Stopped at Sagebrush. At 3 a.m., the knocking started. From below. 3 and 3. But this time I recognized something I hadn't before. The pattern wasn't 3 and 3 with equal pauses. The pause between the 2 sets of 3 was slightly longer than the pause between repetitions. Not SS and Morse. The pause structure made it different. 3 beats. Long pause. 3 beats. Short pause. Repeat. In Morse, with that specific timing, the letter W. Over and over. W. Repeated at 3 a.m. under every truck stop on the route. Whatever is under the pavement on US 93 between Nevada and Idaho is sending the letter W. I've been trying to figure out what W means for 3 months. I have not found an answer that I'm able to accept, but I know that every night at 3 a.m. at truck stops along that route, something lies in the dark under the asphalt and sends its message through the ground and through the chassis and through the berth floor into the sleeping bodies of truckers who are moving through the night above it, sending W. Sending W. Sending W. Story number 6, the last K-knock. The knocking at 3 a.m. was different from every other report I've described, because this time it was coming from inside my own trailer. From inside a sealed load I'd watched them seal in Chicago, and when we broke the seal in Phoenix there was nobody inside but the cargo was wrong. July 28th, 2025. I was parked at the Flying J in Flagstaff, Arizona, northbound on I-40 to I-17 to Phoenix. The Flying J was 4 hours from my Phoenix delivery. I'd taken my rest break. Load was sealed refrigerated cargo from a Chicago pharmaceutical distributor to a Phoenix hospital. Medical supplies, temperature sensitive. The reefer unit had been running continuously. Temperature logs confirmed constant correct environment. At 30:01 a.m. I heard knocking from my trailer. Not my cab. Not outside. From inside the trailer. From behind the nose of the trailer where it met the cab. From inside a sealed, locked, camera-monitored container. I sat up immediately. This was categorically different from door knocking, from window knocking. This was my cargo, my responsibility, a sealed pharmaceutical load with an unbroken seal and functioning temperature logs that had been recording continuously since Chicago. 3 beats. Pause. 3 beats. Pause. 3 beats. I tried rational explanations. Loose cargo shifting against the trailer wall. Temperature contraction sounds in the metal. The reefer unit cycling in a way that produced resonance inside the box. All of these were possible. None of them produced a 3-3 pattern. Loose cargo shifts once. Metal contraction is ongoing or gradual. Reefer cycling doesn't produce a 6-beat knock. I grabbed my phone, called my dispatcher. 3 a.m. He answered on the 4th ring because he was paid to answer on the 4th ring regardless of the hour. I have knocking from inside my trailer. Phoenix pharmaceutical load. Sealed in Chicago. You're sure it's from inside? I'm parked. Engine off. The sound is distinctly from inside the trailer, behind the cab wall. Is the seal intact? I haven't checked yet. I'm calling you first. Check the seal. Don't break it. Call me back. I climbed out, went to the rear of the trailer in the Flagstaff darkness. The seal was intact. The lock was intact. The camera monitoring light on the trailer exterior was green. Functioning. Recording. I walked to the trailer's nose, pressed my ear against the forward trailer wall. The aluminum was cold against my face. I heard it. Clearer now, without the cab's insulation in between. 3 beats. Pause. 3 beats. From inside the trailer, maybe 10 feet back from the forward wall. Not right against the nose. 10 feet in. I called dispatch back. Seal is intact. I'm hearing the sound from approximately 10 feet inside the forward wall. The load was verified before departure. Chicago facility's internal monitoring would have. I understand. The sound is there regardless. Silence on the line. Is it possible you're misidentifying the source? Reefer unit interference? I know what reefer interference sounds like. This is deliberate knocking. 3-3 pattern. Not mechanical. Longer silence. Here's what we're going to do. I'm calling the Chicago facility to verify the load manifest. I'm going to access the trailer's camera feed right now. Don't break the seal. Don't open the trailer. Drive to Phoenix as scheduled. The receiving facility will open it with the pharmaceutical team present. You want me to drive 4 hours with something knocking inside my trailer. I want you to complete the delivery with the seal intact. Phoenix can assess it on arrival. If there's a person inside. The trailer was sealed and verified in Chicago. The camera has been running. I'm accessing the feed right now. He was quiet for 30 seconds. Feed shows the interior. Cargo is stacked correctly. Temperature is correct. I am seeing no person, no animal, no movement. You're seeing the interior and there's nothing producing a knock. That's what I'm seeing. Yes. The knocking continued during our conversation. I held my phone toward the trailer wall so he could hear it. He was quiet. I hear it, he said. What does it sound like to you? Knocking, he said. From inside. Yes. Another silence. Drive to Phoenix. Don't break the seal. If it stops, note the time. If it escalates, call me. I drove to Phoenix. The knocking continued for 1 hour and 22 minutes after I left Flagstaff, then stopped at 4:23 a.m. I noted the time. Drove in silence for the remaining 3 hours. The Phoenix Hospital receiving dock, 7 a.m. The pharmaceutical team, 2 technicians and the supervisor. They checked the seal. Intact. Checked the lock. Intact. Checked the temperature log. Correct throughout. Broke the seal themselves with their own documentation. Opened the trailer. The cargo was wrong. Not missing. Not tampered with. Wrong. The boxes were the correct boxes. The manifest matched the box labels. But the boxes were empty. All of them. 412 boxes of pharmaceutical supplies, correctly labeled, correctly stacked, correctly sealed. Empty. Feather light, like the contents had been removed while the seals remained intact. The pharmaceutical supervisor looked at me. What happened to the product? I don't know. The seal was intact. The lock was intact. The temperature logs show correct environment throughout. I know. 412 boxes of medical supplies are empty. Where are the supplies? I don't know. He called Chicago. Chicago verified the load. Confirmed the boxes had been full, sealed, and loaded correctly. Confirmed the trailer's camera feed showed cargo throughout the journey. Confirmed the seal had never been broken. The camera feed was reviewed at the investigation that followed. It showed cargo throughout the journey. 412 boxes, correctly stacked. No movement. No disturbance. But at the time the knocking had started, 3:01 a.m., the feed showed something else. The investigators noted it. Every box in the trailer, at 3:01 a.m., shifted exactly 2 inches to the left and back. Simultaneously, all 412 boxes, in the same direction, by the same distance, and from that point until 4:23 a.m., 82 minutes. Each box gradually became translucent on the camera feed, like the contents were becoming less present, less real, over 82 minutes while I heard knocking from inside the trailer. The contents of 412 sealed boxes gradually ceased to exist, while the boxes themselves remained intact. At 4:23 a.m., the last trace of pharmaceutical content disappeared from the final box, and the knocking stopped. The investigation found no cause, no explanation, no resolution. The pharmaceutical company's loss was covered by specialized cargo insurance that explicitly covered what the policy called Type 7 unexplained transit loss, which I had never heard of, but which apparently existed as a policy category. I asked the insurance adjuster about Type 7. It's rare, he said, but it has a category. It has a category. What is Type 7 exactly? He looked at his paperwork. Cargo loss occurring during transit in which containers remain sealed and intact but contents are absent on delivery. No evidence of tampering. No mechanism identified. How many Type 7 claims have been filed? I'm not authorized to share that information. More than 10? He looked at me. More than 10. Yes. Is it always pharmaceutical, medical supplies? He gathered his papers. Sir, I've answered what I can. The claim is approved. You're clear of liability. I've driven 2 more pharmaceutical loads since July. Both times I've parked at the Flying J in Flagstaff for my rest break. Both times I've sat awake from 2 a.m. until 4 a.m. listening. Neither time has the knocking started. But in Chicago, when I back into the loading dock, when the pharmaceutical facility staff seals the trailer and hands me the paperwork, I look at the seal number, and I think about Type 7. And I think about what kind of presence can reach into a sealed trailer through an unbroken seal and take what it needs and announce its arrival. With the same 3-3 pattern that comes from under pavement in Nevada and inside empty trailers in Arizona, and from children with signs at passenger windows in Kansas. The same pattern. 3 and 3. SOS. Or W. Or something with no alphabetic equivalent that uses the only language it has, which is the organized impact of something that exists on the wrong side of surfaces. Knocking. Always knocking. Always at 3 a.m. Always from somewhere it shouldn't be able to knock from. Story number 7. The Canot that came back. I heard the knocking at 3 a.m. for the first time 2 years ago in New Mexico, and I reported it and forgot it and moved on. And last week, it knocked again. And this time it used my voice to tell me to open the door. August 5th, 2025. This one is mine. My story. Not a story I heard from another driver or read in a report. This happened to me 2 years ago, and happened again last week, and I am writing it down while it is fresh. Because writing it down is the only response I have that makes sense. 2 years ago, July 2023, I was parked at a rest stop on I-25 in New Mexico, hauling produce. Summer. Hot even at night. I'd been driving the southwest routes for 2 years at that point, and had heard enough 3 a.m. stories to take them seriously without being paralyzed by them. The knock at 3 a.m. was simple. 2 beats. Pause. 2 beats. From my driver's door. I looked through my peephole. Nothing visible. I looked in my mirrors. Nothing visible. I noted it in my personal log. I'd started keeping a personal log separate from my official logbook, specifically for incidents. 2 beats. 3 a.m. I-25 New Mexico rest stop. Nothing visible. I went back to sleep. Over the following 2 years, I heard knocking 4 more times. Different locations, different patterns. I documented each one, added them to the personal log, tried to find commonalities. The only consistent element was the time. 3 a.m. The patterns were different. The locations were different. The sounds were different. I shared some of these stories with other drivers, heard their stories in return, built a mental map of reports, found that the 3 a.m. knocking was widespread, not common, not something every driver experienced, but present enough across enough drivers and routes that it constituted a real phenomenon rather than individual imagination. I wrote the stories you've just read, based on reports from drivers I trusted, drivers with no reason to fabricate, drivers who'd been on the road long enough to know the difference between a strange night and something that required documentation. I finished writing the last of those stories 3 days ago, last week, August 5th. I was parked at the same rest stop on I-25 in New Mexico, not by design, by route necessity. The same stop where I'd heard the first knock 2 years ago. I hadn't thought about that when I parked. Route familiarity makes all rest stops equivalent after enough repetitions. I parked. Ate. Slept. At 3 a.m. exactly I heard knocking. 2 beats. Pause. 2 beats. The exact pattern from 2 years ago. The same rest stop. The same time. The exact same knock. I went to my peephole immediately. 2 years of experience. 2 years of documented reports. My hand found the flashlight and my eye found the peephole simultaneously. The rest stop was lit with the amber of sodium vapor lights. Parking area visible. Several trucks. Concrete pavilion. Normal. Standing at my driver's door was nobody. Empty space at door height. But the knock had been real. I'd been awake when it happened, not surfacing from sleep. Awake and alert, the sound had been from my driver's door. 2 beats. Pause. 2 beats. I stayed at the peephole, watching. 10 seconds. 20. 30. At 37 seconds, something changed. Not a person appearing. Not a figure stepping into view. The quality of the air at my door changed. The amber light from the sodium vapor fixtures behaved slightly differently in the space at my door height. Slightly denser. Slightly less transparent. The visual effect of something present without substance. Something occupying space without body. I pressed my eye to the peephole. Focused on the density. "Hello," I said. The density shifted, reorganized, the way smoke reorganizes when a breath passes through it. Then a voice. From outside my door. From the space where the density was. My voice, not a voice like mine. Not a voice similar to mine. My exact voice. My specific timbre. My particular accent. My cadence. The voice I heard on recordings of myself and recognized with the uncomfortable specificity of your own voice heard externally. It said, "Open the door. I need to show you something." The exact phrasing I used when I had something to show Terrence or another co-driver. My phrasing. My construction. I need to show you something, not open the door or I'll hurt you, not let me in. My natural, casual phrasing. The request I'd made to someone I expected to comply. I stayed at the peephole. "What do you need to show me?" Pause. The density shifted again, like it was accessing something, searching for the right response. The pattern. You need to see the pattern. 2 years of documentation. 6 stories written from reports. The 3 a.m. phenomenon. The patterns. 33. 22. The movement along the trailer. The woman counting. The knocking from below. The emptied cargo. The handprints on the inside. The pattern. "Tell me the pattern," I said. "I can't tell you. I need to show you. Open the door." I thought about the 2 drivers who opened their doors and the officer's account at Buckhorn, who were alive but different afterward, who stopped driving shortly after, about who I'd be the next morning if I opened the door at 3 a.m. to show myself a pattern I couldn't be told. "I'm writing the pattern down," I said. "I've been writing it down for 2 years. If I open the door and something changes in me, I lose the writing. I lose the documentation." The density was still, like it was considering this. "The documentation is the point," my voice said. "You understand that? The documentation is why I'm here. Tell me what that means. You've been collecting reports, building a record, 2 years, dozens of drivers, hundreds of incidents. You're making a document. The document matters. The document is what I need you to finish. I can finish it without opening the door." "No." A pause. "Not all of it. What I need to show you is the part you can't get from reports, the part that requires direct experience." "What part?" "The reason. You have the what. You have the how. You have the when. You don't have the why." I sat with my eye at the peephole, and my hand on my flashlight, and my heart doing something between terror and something I couldn't name. Something closer to recognition. 2 years of documentation. Stories collected from drivers who'd experienced things I'd mostly avoided. And now, whatever had been at the center of it all was at my door, wearing my voice, offering an answer. "If I open the door," I said, "will I be able to continue writing?" Long pause. "The longest." "I don't know," my voice said, and the honesty in it, the uncertainty that matched my own voice's quality when I didn't know something, was the most terrifying thing I'd heard in 2 years of 3 a.m. incidents, because it meant whatever was outside my door was not scripted, not performing, was actually uncertain, was actually thinking, was actually, in some sense I didn't want to examine, me. The two drivers who opened their doors in Kansas, I said. Healthy, but different. Stopped driving shortly after. Yes. Did they get the pattern? They got part of it? What stopped them from continuing? They were shown more than they could carry and keep working. The density was starting to thin. I could feel it, the way you feel the approach of dawn in deep darkness. Not visible, just present in a change of quality. Come back, I said. Come back when I've finished the documentation, when the record is complete. Come back and I'll open the door. The density dispersed. The sodium vapor light returned to its normal consistency. The quality of the space outside my door returned to empty. I sat in my cab until dawn. Did not sleep. In the morning I drove north. I drove the rest of the route in normal daylight with normal traffic and normal radio. And I delivered my load and I drove home. And I sat down and I wrote these stories. The ones you've just read, every one of them true, in the way truth works when it comes from honest people describing experiences that exceed standard frameworks. I'm finishing now. This is the last story, the 7th of 7. The documentation is as complete as I can make it. I'm going to drive I-25 next week. I'm going to stop at the rest stop where the first knock happened 2 years ago. I'm going to park at 3 a.m. and I'm going to wait. And if my voice comes back, if the density forms at my door, if my own phrasing asks me to open the door because I need to see the pattern, I'm going to make a decision. I'm not going to tell you what that decision will be, because I don't know yet. Because whatever is on the other side of that door knows my voice well enough to use it, knows my writing, knows my documentation, knows what I value, and what I'll respond to, and what I can and can't be told instead of shown. And that means it has been present for 2 years, reading over my shoulder, listening at my door before I was awake enough to hear it knock. The 3 a.m. knock has been there from the beginning, waiting for me to finish writing before it gave me a reason to open the door. The documentation is done, and it's almost 3 a.m.